Welcome everyone to the final part of my 40 Final Fantasy soundtracks ranked. We have some of the best soundtracks of all time to get through, so sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy. If you haven't checked out part 1 and part 2, please give them a go. I am very proud of this series and your support will help convince me to make more videos outside of the usual Let's Play episodes that I normally put up on my channel. I will throw up the current chart listing over this introduction so you can brush up on where we stand. And wow, do we have a lot to get through. It has taken me some time to get this final part together, mostly thanks to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth steamrolling my free time. But it is finally here, and it is a behemoth of a video standing at around 2.5 hours of musical joy. I hope you stick with it till the end. However, feel free to use the chapter select to jump around. I am thoroughly looking forward to diving into the top 10, as this list really does comprise of some of my favourite music ever to grace my ears. Nostalgia is going to play a very large part of this list, but I think we can all agree that the music contained within is something very special, and if you are watching this, you have an interest in Final Fantasy music, and I guarantee there will be something here for you that you are going to love. Those of you that have been following this series from the beginning may know what games we are going to see in this top 10, just through process of elimination. But I think there may be a couple of surprises for you here too. I know I was surprised with a couple of these. One soundtrack I never envisioned reaching the top 10. I knew I liked it, but I didn't realise just how much. The maths doesn't lie. Unfortunately, I did have a few copyright claims against a couple of songs I tried to spotlight, so I cannot include those, but I still talk about them. Without further ado, let's take a pleasant stroll through the top 10 of my favourite Final Fantasy soundtracks of all time. In 10th place we have Final Fantasy XII, the original soundtrack. Track count 100, total listen time 4 hours, 53 minutes and 38 seconds. Final Fantasy XII, aka Final Fantasy Star Wars. Seriously, this game has so much Star Wars iconography running through it. The Imperial Palace literally looks like a Star Destroyer. I enjoy Final Fantasy XII on many levels, but for me it has one of the weakest stories in the franchise and possibly the worst protagonist as well, if you can call him a protagonist. Vaan is an insufferable dimwit and Penelo is literally a cardboard cutout of a human being. No depth to her whatsoever. It's fortunate that the rest of the cast are at least likeable. The game has its upsides though. I enjoy the gameplay, the gambit system and many of the environments in the game are good too. The absolute best thing about it though is the music. It does have a great soundtrack and it is very much deserved to be in the top 10, even if it just pips it in. This may be a slight oversight on my side, but I never bothered to listen to the Zodiac Age version of the soundtrack. When I was playing the Zodiac Age version of the game, I played around with the different soundtracks and I didn't notice much of a difference. So this ranking is based on the original soundtrack for the original release of the game. However, the Zodiac Age soundtrack is also available and I have listened to a few tracks from both versions back to back for a comparison. In large, the music is essentially the same. The Zodiac Age version is just clearly using better instrumentation in most cases. I don't feel the difference is great enough to warrant two separate entries, so I consider my scores here to apply to both versions. The track listings are largely identical with only one track on the Zodiac Age absent on the original, which I have not counted. Also, the Zodiac Age version of the soundtrack is longer in playtime as many of the tracks are extended. It is nearly an hour longer than the original. I have included 2 songs featured in the game that are not on either soundtrack, which is why my track count is 100 and not 98. I am guessing these are absent due to rights issues or something. I awarded 9 perfect 10s to this soundtrack, 6 amazing 9s and 12 8s. Nothing scored below a 5. The soundtrack starts great with the first 3 tracks scoring 8s. Track 1, Demo Movie. Track 2, Final Fantasy XII version. And track 3, Opening Movie, Final Fantasy XII theme. Not only does the game have a lot of visual references to Star Wars, track 3, Opening Movie, has clear influences from the Star Wars soundtrack. There are 9 more 8s peppered throughout the soundtrack. Here is a list to whet the appetite. Track 5, Boss Battle, gets the first 10 of the album. This is a great theme. I love the way it builds, and then at about 56 seconds you get to that crescendo and it just sends shockwaves down my back. A great piece of music. On to track 9, Streets of Rabanasta. This is catchy as hell and gets under the skin. I awarded it a 9. A little chirpy tune to get you started on your adventure. Track 23, The Clan Hall, gets the next 9. Very grandiose and again chirpy and uplifting. It has a huge Final Fantasy Tactics influence from what I remember. I know Final Fantasy XII is set in Ivalice, which is the same world as Tactics, so that does make sense. A special mention here to track 27, The Garam Scythe Waterway. I gave this a 5, but I hate the area so much in that game that I wanted to give this a 1. Alas, the music isn't terrible, it's fine, so it gets a 5, but damn, I hate that place. We get to track 32, Flash of Steel, where we find my next 10. Loud, bold and dramatic, just how I like my boss music. Many of the 10s in this soundtrack have already been covered in many of the Final Fantasy XIV soundtracks, so there's going to be a little bit of retreading here. Track 41, The Arcadian Empire, got a 9. I really like this tune. It's funny how I like the theme for the antagonistic state of this game. It has a march-like rhythm to it with that brassy instruments. Gets my feet tapping to the beat. Track 57, Battle with an Esper, is the next track worthy of a mention, and here I gave it a 10. The battles with the Espers were always epic fights, and this music really helped make it so. Jahara, Land of the Garif, track 61, got a 9. I have always enjoyed this track. A whole load of 10s come into view now, starting with track 64, Eriut Village, the Land of the Bunny Women. Never ask a Vera her age. This is a very pleasant piece, as to be expected. It is perfect for the setting. Next we hit my favourite version of a much loved track from all of Final Fantasy, and also just so happens to be one of the best boss battles in the game. Track 68, Battle on the Big Bridge, Final Fantasy XII version. Awake, mortals, you face the blade of legend. Sometimes I think I play Final Fantasy XII just to do this fight and listen to this track. So good. Next up, one of my favourite pieces from the whole game. Track 71, Respite. I would describe this as magical, easily one of the best pieces in the whole soundtrack. It's also a nice track to have after travelling through that awful cave. The name Respite is so fitting for this track. And then another 10 lands with track 74, Fon Coast. Again, this is one I have always liked from way back when I first played the game. It blends so many different sounds together in a high tempo theme and is such a joy to listen to. I can see my team running through the white sands of Fon Coast now. We leave the 10s now for a bit and pass a 9 with track 81, the Esper. But it doesn't take long to reach another 10 with track 90, To Walk Amongst Gods. Mystical, magical and haunting. It feels like something from an older Tim Burton movie. The Great Crystal would be extremely unbearable to navigate and travel through if it wasn't for the stage's aesthetic and this music being so good. Coming to the end of the soundtrack, we hit a 10 with track 97, Ending Movie. As with all these types of tracks, they take all the best themes from the game and expertly craft them into a piece that can be appreciated completely removed from the game. My list here actually deviates from the track list on streaming services. My track 98 is Kiss Me Goodbye by Angela Aki. I awarded this a 9. Unfortunately, I cannot sample this track due to copyright. It is not on either the original or the Zodiac Age soundtracks on Spotify or YouTube, but it is available on the Distant Worlds 3 album. It doesn't quite hit the perfect mark for me, even though it is an amazing song. My favourite track of Final Fantasy XII is track 71, Respite. It is such a brilliant, calming and inspiriting track. I usually gravitate towards the boss battle themes when it comes to my favourites, but this one is always the one I think of first when thinking of the soundtrack. What a fantastic album with some amazing songs to start off the top 10. About 2/5 of the soundtrack did hit the 5s though, so we'll see what the ones above have to offer. In 9th place we have Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Track count 26, total listen time 1 hour, 22 minutes and 50 seconds. I don't know how I'm going to tackle this entry. I bet I'm going to hit copyright hell with this one. I may have to use footage from Final Fantasy VII Remake and may even need to use covers of the songs. Teeny tiny sneaky entry here. I wasn't expecting it to do as well as it did, but I'm standing by it. It's not a game, but it might as well be. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children takes the 9th slot. I really did go back and forth on whether to include this and decided I would because it is as much a part of the Final Fantasy VII canon as much as Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus. And this movie has a great soundtrack, and I wanted an excuse to talk about some of the best tracks because one of them is so incredible I had to include it. As it is a movie soundtrack, it only has 26 tracks and scored 2 10s, 4 9s and 3 8s. Track 2, The Promised Land, is the first to get a 9. I really like this track, but not enough to score a 10. So close though. I can't help but hum that tune. It is such a great song. A few tracks on we hit track 5, a fantastic piano version of Tifa's theme. I gave this a 9. There are quite a few piano pieces in this soundtrack, and all are great. This one is fantastic. From Tifa's piano theme to Aerith's piano theme. Track 11 is another amazing take on Aerith's theme and was awarded a 9. This version of this song is gorgeous. The only reason I didn't score either of these a 10 is because it is all piano. That's not a bad thing, but if there were some accompanying strings or just something gentle behind it, I would give them a 10 easy. I may end up eating these words later, as I know I have given a few piano solos 10s. Track 12, Battle in the Forgotten City, gets an 8. The opening of this track gives me heavy Metal Gear Solid vibes. I really like the beat on this one and that bassy synth. The last 9 I awarded was to track 22, Genova, Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children version. A heavy take on this classic theme. If there was a little bit more variation in the instrumentation of this track, it would be a 10. I also felt it could have stretched on a little bit longer, but it is amazing all the same. But what we are here for is the next track that is so flipping good I nearly damaged my eardrums listening to it on full blast on repeat on my old MP3 player. Track 23, Advent, One Winged Angel. Oh my god, this is so good and hands down my favourite rendition of this theme ever put to my ears. The opening gives you the sense that you are about to get a full orchestral treatment of this amazing track, only for the goddamn freaking amazing hard rock, heavy metal guitar and drums to come in at 38 seconds. It blows you straight out of your seat. We get One Winged Angel a la metal version for the next 2 minutes until about 2 minutes and 22 seconds, where the track puts you on your toes with those strings, and then a guitar comes in building up to something amazing, and then it hits you at 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Everything drops, the guitar is riffing like crazy, the drums come in at 320. Now my head is banging all over the place. The vocals come in and euphoria just takes over. The rest of the song is almost a blur. I'll probably need to check myself at this point. We then get a nice cheerful at 4:52 with the flutes and the wind instruments. Then back to the singing, and it builds and builds and builds right up to the end, leaving you exhausted from a fight you didn't even take part in. Incredible. So flipping good. I love this track, and it is the reason I included this soundtrack in this countdown. We are not done there though. There are 2 back-to-back 8s with track 24, Cloud Smiles, and then track 25, End Credits. That is where the album ends on streaming services, but there is officially one more track. Track 26, Calling. It is by Kiyosuke Himuro. I gave it a 10. Once again, I cannot sample this track due to copyright. I really like this track. I have no idea what he's singing about, but the music is fantastic. If you think this is a real cheat, then just know that excluding this track from the album doesn't change the position this album is in the chart. It would still be in 9th place. This may be a bit of a controversial inclusion in this experiment, but I am happy with it, and at the very least had a chance to express my admiration for one of my favourite pieces of music to come from Final Fantasy VII. Advent, One Winged Angel, is my clear favourite for this album and my favourite version of this track across all iterations. Superb. In 8th place, we have Final Fantasy X-2. Track count 71, total listen time 3 hours, 3 minutes and 7 seconds. Did you forget this game existed? The soundtrack doesn't appear to exist on any streaming platforms as far as I can tell. The original soundtrack is 61 tracks, then I add 10 more for the International and Last Mission soundtrack. So technically this is a 2-in-1. I have the 10-2 soundtrack myself, but not the International one, so had to hunt for those and found a playlist on YouTube. It is the first soundtrack in the Final Fantasy line to not feature a single track composed by Nobuo Uematsu. I remember reading once that Final Fantasy X-2 was like taking a summer vacation in Spira, and that is how I like to describe it. Seems to be a love or hate it game within the Final Fantasy community. I like most of the aspects of the game, but it doesn't touch the sheer brilliance of Final Fantasy X. I am surprised at just how high up in the rankings this made it. I never envisioned this would make the top 10, let alone 8th place. Maybe I have been a little too lenient on it and let my nostalgia for the music run a little rampant. I have tried not to let that happen, and I still think this is an amazing soundtrack. The soundtrack boasts 7 10s, 11 9s and 9 8s. It did score 1 4 though. The soundtrack is right up there with some of the best and hummable themes in the series, and an absolute killer of an opening track. Track 1, Eternity, Memories of Light and Waves, kicks off this soundtrack with another one of my favourite tracks in all of Final Fantasy. I love this piece of music so much. What a fantastic melody, and lands the first 10 of this soundtrack. The 4 I awarded goes to track 35, Disquiet. I have never liked this track and only ever really tolerated it. It fits the purpose of the game, but not nice to listen to outside of the game. Here is a list of the 8s I awarded on this one. Track 3, Europa, Fight Number 1, gets a 9. This is catchy as heck. 3 more 9s on the way to the next 10. Track 7, We're the Gullwings, is a funky track and gets a 9. Track 9, Mount Gagazet, also gets a 9. Great instrumentation in this song. I really like the melody that plays around 1 minute and 10. I find myself humming along to it. And track 13, Let Me Blow You a Kiss, again, super catchy with a sprinkling of funk. It's very different to a lot of previous Final Fantasy soundtracks. The second 10 of the soundtrack goes to track 15, Besaid. I will say that I prefer the Besaid theme from Final Fantasy X to this, but this is still a great track and worthy of a 10. One of the most hummable tracks in this game and just pleasant to listen to. Track 24, Macalania Forest, is another 10. This is a solemn piece and kind of makes me feel a little sad. Also, another one I find myself humming to a lot as well. A good many high scoring tracks are clustered here, with track 25, Bikanil Desert, getting a 9. Such an eclectic mix of sounds, and it works really well. Track 27, Calmlands, also got a 9. I really can't help myself, I'm humming to it now. Such a jolly track. And track 28, Zanarkand Ruins, getting the next 10. I love the instrumentation on this track. It has a fantastic melody and the way the piano is juxtaposed with the other sounds and instruments is genius. Track 32, The Gull Wings March, gets a 9. This one is nearly a 10 and would get it if it weren't for the baby crying. I get enough of that in real life. It really could do without that. We power on through to track 42, Yuna's Ballad, for a 10. Again, with the piano and brilliant cover of the overall theme in this soundtrack. Beautiful piece. We follow that with track 43, Your Friendly Neighbourhood Gullwings, for a 9. This album sounds like the soundtrack to a game show, it's just so catchy. Aeons, track 47, which I gave a 6, does anyone else think of Terminator 2 when they hear this? It reminds me of the Terminator so much. Anyway, track 48, The Far Plane Abyss, scored a 9. It has that 1000 words theme running through it, but also gives me this sense of dread. I get mixed emotions from this one. Track 50, 1000 words, Final Fantasy X-2 Mix, scored an 8. A Thousand Words is brilliant, but I much prefer the English version of the song. One thing I will say that let this soundtrack down just a little is the boss music. Normally the boss music in these games is the highlight of the soundtrack for me, but the final boss themes in this game barely scratched over a 5. In fact, the next track to score really well is track 59, Ending Until We Meet Again, receiving a well-deserved 9. The final track of the original album, track 61, Epilogue, A Reunion, gets a 9. A beautiful compilation of many of the great themes introduced in this game. Heading into the international tracks now, I carry on the track numbering. Track 63, 1000 Words, Final Fantasy X-2 Mix, English version, gets a solid 10. This is a brilliant song. The lyrics, the music and performance are fantastic and one of my favourite songs from the series. Because of that, it was practically impossible not to give track 70, 1000 Words, Orchestra and English version a 10 too. I'm not sure which version I prefer of the two, maybe the orchestra version as it is twice as long, twice as epic and has some gorgeous piano work in there too. I do feel that Final Fantasy X-2 gets overlooked a lot, or at least the soundtrack does. The fact it isn't on any music streaming services is a clear indication that it doesn't get the attention it deserves. Why is this not available when nearly everything else is? Very odd indeed. 1000 Words is incredible, but my favourite track goes to track 1, Eternity, Memories of Light and Waves. Beautiful piano, beautiful melody, and just an all-round incredible piece of music that brings me joy every time I hear it. Oh Ben, you are going to kill me. In 7th place we have Final Fantasy IX. Track count 110. Total listen time 4 hours, 47 minutes and 13 seconds. The first game of what I would consider to be the golden age of Final Fantasy now enters the chart at 7th place. Final Fantasy IX, the third game originally released on the PlayStation back in the year 2000. What a phenomenal game and what a phenomenal soundtrack. Just looking at the summary and this is what I see. 14, yes, 14 10s, 13 9s and 14 8s. Just skipping the 8s means I still have 27 songs to spotlight. I think I'm going to have to speed up the 9s. How is this not further up? Well, I also see 1, 2, yes, a 2. The only other soundtrack to score a 2 was Final Fantasy XIII 2. But we also have 4 4s. What's going on here? I'll start with the bad so I can wash that out with the good. The 4 tracks I gave a 4 to were track 54, Clara's Trunk, track 59, City Under Siege, track 65, Before the Altar, and track 88, The Four Mirrors. I found these 4 tracks just a little annoying and grating. Not offensive or anything, just skippable. Let's have a look at the 2. This one is understandable. Track 87, Ibsen's Castle. I hate this track. The song grates like a cheese grater down the spine. I think that is the intention due to the topsy-turvy nature of the area, but listening to this outside of the game is akin to torture. No thank you. Only reason I didn't give it a 1 is because it's still a competent piece of music. Right, with that out of the way, let's move on to the more pleasant stuff. I have a lot to get through. Let's list off the 8s or I will be here all day. The soundtrack starts okay with some 7s, but it really starts going from track 5, Vivi's theme. I gave that a 10 for hopefully obvious reasons. A nice, whimsical, floaty and at times a little mischievous theme for one of the best characters in the entire series. Vivi MVP. We pass 4 9s on the way to the next 10. Track 6, Swords of Fury. Track 7, Vamos Flamenco. Track 9, Court Jesters. And track 18, Battle 1. All of these scored a 9. See, there are so many top tracks on this soundtrack, I am having to run past 9s so this video doesn't go on for hours, and this is the 7th best album. The next 10 is track 21, Battle 2. The tension in this track is brilliant and is probably only outdone by one other from another game which I have not yet covered. The boss battle music is always good in these games. So this next 10 worthy track is track 25, Over the Hill, which I used to know as Crossing the Knoll. This is my favourite overworld music in all of Final Fantasy. Beautiful piece of music. So much so that I created this theme on my Nokia 3210 decades ago using the built-in ringtone creator on the phone. I took a MIDI file of this song, put it in this special application someone had created, isolated the melody, and it generated the code combination I needed to input into my phone to make the ringtone. Anyone else remember doing something similar? Those were the days. 2 more 9s on the way to the next 10. Track 33, Cid's theme. And track 37, Festival of the Hunt. Track 39, Quina's theme, is the next 10. I just want to go catch some frogs now. Love the beat behind this one. We pass 2 9s now. Track 42, Freya's theme. Freya's theme is very close to a 10, I have to admit. I think the backing is just a tad too repetitive, which stops it hitting that 10 for me, but still a fantastic track. Track 51, Wicked Melody, comes in with another 9. Wicked Melody is brilliant, and again, almost a 10, but it is lacking just a little something. Another song on this album with a wicked beat behind it though. Track 56, Eternal Harvest, is a clear 10. This is fantastic, brilliant, amazing. I only wish it was longer. Track 60, Roses of May, got a 9. Again with that piano, Nobu doing it again. What a fantastic theme for another great character. Track 63, Black Mage Village, gets the next 10. funky piece of music this is for one of the most tragically fated people in all of Final Fantasy. 1-9 on the way to the next 10. Track 78, Master of Time. It's like a boss theme that never gets going, but it is ominous like a dark cloud hanging over the events to come. The next 10 is track 83, Mount Gulag. Another track that just gets my feet tapping. A throwback all the way to the first game, which I didn't know about at the time, having never played Final Fantasy 1 until well after playing Final Fantasy 9. Either way, a great track. I really like the way the synth is blended into this soundtrack. We have another 9 next with track 85, Aboard the Hildegarda. And then we're about to hit 10 Street. So many 10s are coming up. 2 back-to-back 10s now. Track 90, Terra. Terra might possibly be my favourite piece from this soundtrack. Masterful use of the harp and a brilliant track. Love the theme and emotional feelings this gives. Again, I just wish it was a little longer. It's just over 2 minutes long. Track 91, Bramble, the Soulless Village. Bramble then follows that Terra theme. It perfectly fits the setting, but is also a pure joy to listen to on its own. I nearly had 4 10s in a row here, but the next track, track 92, Pandemonium, didn't quite make the grade and scored a 9. Track 93, Not Alone, could only score a 10. Probably most people's favourite track from this game. The piece to accompany Zidane's little crisis of confidence. A fantastic tune and used to great effect in the game as it carries on playing when entering the battles. Track 96, Silver Dragon, gets a 10. Love the introduction in this piece. Reminds me of a track from Final Fantasy VIII. Then at 35 seconds the main battle theme kicks in and it's superb. You really get the sense that the end is near, but the real battle has just begun. How does Nobu do it? We have a double 10 now with essential ending of the game, track 99, The Darkness of Eternity. Kuja's wicked melody starts off this track, then it leads into the main battle theme, which has Kuja's melody running throughout it. This is the real fight here. Love the drums in this track, and the harp comes in. The tempo whips back and forth, you never know where you're going. Track 100, The Final Battle, is another 10. This one takes a little while to get going, over a minute in fact, but when it does, it shoots to the moon. Fantastic track to accompany the final battle. But we are not done. We have 1-9, 1-10 sitting in the final throes of the soundtrack. The 9 goes to track 105, Behind the Door. Track 106, Melodies of Life, Final Fantasy, gets the 10. Was there any doubt here? Melodies of Life is a brilliant song. I also like how the main Final Fantasy theme comes in at the end to finish the song and ends with a real fairy tale story-like ending. A fitting way to finish a fantastic game. There we have Final Fantasy IX. Some would consider this their favourite game and their favourite soundtrack. For me, it made it to 7th place. My favourite track on this one is hard to pick. It changes so often depending on how I feel. It could be Over the Hill, Not Alone, The Darkness of Eternity, or Melodies of Life. There are just so many 10s, so many amazing songs, but I think the one that pips it out in front of all of them is track 90, Terror. Beautiful. In 6th place, we have Final Fantasy X, the HD version. Track count 94, total listen time 4 hours, 48 minutes and 27 seconds. The HD version of Final Fantasy X I feel is different enough to warrant its own entry, so that is what I did. For many I know, people absolutely hate it in comparison to the original. I obviously like it as it has made it all the way up to 6th place on this list. I will admit it took a while to get used to some of the changes, and there are a few tracks that differ largely in score from the original to the HD version. When we reach the original score on this list, I will go over the major differences between them. The HD version of the soundtrack is not officially on streaming services, so I listened to a community playlist on YouTube. I will happily put Final Fantasy X in my top 3 Final Fantasies of all time. It's not my favourite, but I can't decide if it's second or third. I love this game so much and the music plays a large part in that. I also really enjoy the change in direction they took for the battle system, making it fully turn-based, and I am one of those people that can spend hours levelling up characters on the sphere grid, especially in the late game. What I am going to do here though is skip this entry. When we reach the original score, I will go through that and give my comparisons to the HD soundtrack, pointing out the tracks that I scored differently between them and which version I prefer. I will mention a few things though. There are a couple of tracks, track 1 and track 90, that are spoken tracks of a few seconds. I almost omitted those, however I have decided to count them. I have scored them both a 5 just to keep them relatively neutral. The official track listing is technically 104 tracks long. It has 10 songs from Final Fantasy X-2 at the end of it. As far as I can tell, these 10 tracks are no different to the tracks on the Final Fantasy X-2 soundtrack. I have removed them from my workings here and they will not go towards the score of this soundtrack. The HD version has 14 tracks that scored an 8, 10 tracks that scored a 9 and 12 tracks that scored the perfect 10. It does have 1-4 in the mix. I will go over this when I get through the original soundtrack. The scorings for both soundtracks are mostly similar, but there are a few differences that are worth pointing out. Into the top 5 now. In 5th place, we have Final Fantasy VI. Track count 61, total listen time 3 hours, 7 minutes and 47 seconds. Welcome to Final Fantasy VI. Some would argue this game needs a remake more than any other in the series, and I largely agree with that assessment. Even if they were to give it the HD 2D treatment like Octopath Traveler, that would be incredible. First released in 1994, Final Fantasy VI was the last game to arrive on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and will be the last mainstream Final Fantasy game on a Nintendo console for quite some time. It would be 9 years for any type of Final Fantasy game to return to a Nintendo console, with the release of Final Fantasy Tactics Advance on the Game Boy Advance and Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles on the GameCube, both in 2003. Final Fantasy VI is a much loved entry in the series and a firm favourite for many. It has a fantastic soundtrack with one of the most ambitious final boss themes ever put to a video game. Of 61 tracks on this soundtrack, 7 scored 10 points, 8 scored 9 and 10 scored 8. 40% of the soundtrack scored 8 or above, nothing below a 5. Starting off we have track 1, Omen. I awarded this a 9. Right off the bat, you can tell how much attention went into making this soundtrack. Here are the 8s I awarded to Final Fantasy VI. Track 13, Cyan's theme, scored a 9. Already so many iconic and beloved themes scoring high. The first 10 for me though comes in track 17, The Veldt. A surprise for some, but I freaking love this track. It's that beat, those drums, plus it has an excellent little melody going through it. So many different instruments blended into this one, and I adore it. If you're not convinced, listen to it with a decent set of headphones. Track 22, Celis's theme, gets a 9. Instantly hummable with a fantastic melody. But then we move on to one of my favourite boss themes from the entire series. Track 24, The Decisive Battle. A fast tempo, heavy hitting with what I think is an attempt at an electric guitar in the background there. A definite 10, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Many of you would probably give this next one a 10, but for me it doesn't quite make the grade and gets a fat 9. Track 26, Terra's theme. It is a very good theme, don't get me wrong. I love it, but I don't count it amongst the absolute greats. The next 10 arrives with track 30, Slam Shuffle. Now hear me out. This tune is freaking incredible. I remember liking this track way back from when I first played the game. It just clicked with me instantly. I can't help but tap my foot, my hands, or whatever wants to tap. My head bobs every time I listen to it. It's bobbing right now. Another 9 now with track 35, Grand Finale. A very fast-paced track that you may think would grate on me, but the instrumentation gels well and the whole thing has me bobbing from side to side. Track 39, Magitech Research Facility, grabs another 10. A great track that takes me right back. Some of these 10s may be fueled by nostalgia, but this tune is bopping. If you listen to it with headphones, which really should be the only way you listen to these soundtracks, you really hear so much depth and complexity in the track. You must admire the professionalism on display here. Leaving the Magitech facility, we have track 40, The Airship Blackjack, which gets a 9. A great airship theme. I could fly around the world for days listening to this. Track 48, Battle to the Death. I originally awarded this a 9, but on repeat listens, I had to bump it up to a 10. It's the bit at 27 seconds to 52 seconds, it's just so damn good. The rest is incredible too, but that aforementioned bit elevates the track into the 10 tier. Track 52, Searching for Friends, which basically becomes the theme of the game for the latter half of it. This gets a 9. This is a great tune to whistle. Could you imagine what a full remake of this game would be like? How would they create Kefka, possibly the most chaotic villain in the series? Now we come to the 2 longest tracks in this whole experiment. Track 59, Dancing Mad. I was extremely lucky when I went to the Distant Worlds concert in London in 2012. They have an organ in the Royal Albert Hall where the concert took place, and they did a live abridged version of this song. It was freaking incredible. The whole piece is nearly 18 minutes long, and it's not even the longest track on this album. This gets a 10. Here's the thing, there are parts of this track that are nowhere near a 10. The song was split down into 4 movements in the Stormblood soundtrack, and I awarded it a 7, 6, 8 and 10. And that is a very accurate assessment. As this version is all one track, I can't knock it. Maybe skip the first half and listen to the excellent final section. Overall though, the track is superb. How can I not give it a 10? The next track, 60, Balance is Restored, gets a 10 from me. This behemoth of a track is 21 minutes and 35 seconds. It's longer than most episodes of Dragon Ball Super. I can't award it anything lower than a 10. The final piece on the soundtrack, track 61, Prelude, gets a 9. It's the Final Fantasy theme. It's not going to score anything lower than that, right? The nostalgia is great with this one. But then let's face it, this entire top 10 is pure nostalgia. My favourite track goes to The Decisive Battle, as it is just that good. What an amazing soundtrack to start the top 5. Now if they could announce a full remake of this in a HD 2D style, I would be so happy. In 4th place, we have Final Fantasy X, the original soundtrack. Track count, 91. Total listen time, 4 hours, 26 minutes and 29 seconds. Final Fantasy X, the original soundtrack, takes the number 4th slot. This game is the reason I bought a PlayStation 2. I remember visiting a friend's house and he had this. We played it for a few hours and the very next weekend I went out and bought a PlayStation 2 with Final Fantasy X and a DVD, as it was part of a package deal. It was the first DVD I ever bought, and that was Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. How was I to know I just bought a stinker of a movie? Anyway, this game is fantastic. I love this game so much, not just because of the music, but the story itself is one of my favourites. There are so many emotions in play with this game, dealing with death and facing your own mortality, deciding if your life is worth more than everyone else, and would you be willing to sacrifice yourself for the good of others. But we are not here to talk about the game, we are here for the music. As with the HD version, there are two very small tracks that are spoken lines, track 1 and track 90. I gave them a 5. These tracks don't exist on the albums on streaming services, but they are a part of the official track list on the physical soundtrack. As I mentioned before, I will do a little comparison between the original soundtrack, which I will refer to as OG, and the remastered soundtrack, which I will refer to as HD. I will compare everything from 9 and above. First, let's compare the summaries. Final Fantasy X OG scored 14 10s, 8 9s and 13 8s, while 10 HD scored 12 10s, 10 9s and 14 8s. This one opens with track 2, Zanarkand, both versions getting a 10. I think this is peak piano for the series. What can I say about this piece of music that others have not already said? I don't think it is possible to quantify how beautiful this piece of music is. The melody, the piano work, the story it tells, it almost brings me to tears listening to it. Listen to my story. Both soundtracks scored 1-4, which is the same track on each version. Track 22, The Trials. I have never liked this track. It irritates me like a mosquito bite. Just quick, here are the 8s I awarded to both soundtracks. Track 3, Prelude, is a very brave take on the main Final Fantasy theme. I don't think it would have worked had it been done by anyone other than Nobuo Uematsu. I gave this a 9 on the OG, the HD version was slightly less impressive and was awarded an 8. The second 10 of this soundtrack goes to the excellent headbanger of a metal masher, track 5, Otherworld. With any luck, I'll be able to sample this without getting a copyright claim. I have always loved this track. Track 9, Battle Theme, I gave the original a 7. This battle theme has never really gripped me like some others in the series. Maybe monster capturing has made me sick of it. However, the HD version I gave a 9. I really feel the HD version is better. It feels grander and uses a much better instrument set. I won't go so easy on you next time. The OG gets the win this time though, with the 10 for track 16, Enemy Attack. I love the dread this track instills in you. You get this feeling that you have to be quick or hell is going to break loose. It has a similar vibe to the boss music from Final Fantasy IX, but this one feels more like panic than oppression. The HD version I gave a 9 because I felt they went a little overboard with some of the instruments. I'm not a fan of that industrial sound they added to it. Still great though. Track 18, Beside, is another one of my all-time favourites. At least in the original version, it gets a 10. This sounds like the most lo-fi chill music from Final Fantasy ever, and I love it. The HD version, not so much. The melody and everything is there, but it is too far away from the original, and I don't think it quite works as well as the original. I gave the HD version an 8. Track 19, Spirit Unplugged, received a 9 for both versions. Again, just chill as fudge and a joy to listen to. Plus, it starts to drop in the melody for Seteki Dani, which finds its way into many of the tracks in this game. This is what I meant in part 1 about how a soundtrack can live and die by how good the main themes throughout it are, and this one is incredible. Track 30, Calm Before the Storm, gets a 9 on both versions. Seriously, this soundtrack is the chill Final Fantasy soundtrack, for the most part. Track 37, Blitz Off, also gets the 9 on both. I really like this one. It is probably the reason I find Blitzball tolerable. I wasn't a massive fan of that minigame, but the music really helped make it. Track 40, Chocobo Jam, scored an 8 in the original soundtrack, but I gave it a 9 on the remastered version. The drums on the HD version are so much more pronounced, and the overall music is elevated because of it. There is more character to the track on the HD version. This is actually the last track that scored differently between versions, at least for anything scoring 9 or a 10. Everything scoring a 9 or a 10 after this scored that on both the OG and the HD soundtrack. We skip ahead 10 tracks now to track 50, Thunder Plains, which scored a 10. I love this piece of music. Having it start with a ticking clock that acts as a metronome to the whole piece is genius. How can you not bob your head to this? Great piece of music that shines on both versions. Also very uplifting considering you are travelling through a very dangerous and hostile environment. Now count to 200 with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Track 63, Assault, gets a 9. I really like the melody for this and the fast tempo of the track. An undeniable 10 now with track 66, Via Purifico. This is an incredible piano piece and absolutely beautiful. Finally, at track 70, we get an absolute masterpiece with the already mentioned Seteki Dani. Isn't it wonderful? And yes, it really is. An obvious 10. This is amazing. I absolutely love this song. I have no idea what the words translate to, but I love it all the same. Track 75, Servants of the Mountain, receives a 10. This is 100% in my top 5 favourite tracks of all of Final Fantasy. I love this piece of music so much. It scored 10s on both, but I do prefer the original. This is such an emotive piece, it has drawn me to tears in the past, and almost every time I listen to it, I get a pulse of tingles that start in the back of my neck and works their way down my spine. I am not being metaphorical. This literally happens to me often when I listen to this song. Amazing. The next two tracks both scored 9s. Track 76, Hymn, the Ronso. This version of the hymn is incredibly powerful, and it is the only version of the hymn I scored high enough to mention. The rest scored 5s except for Hymn Spira, which I gave a 7. And then track 77, Wandering. A very solemn and thoughtful piece. It portrays what Tidus is feeling at that moment perfectly. The next track is another 10 out of 10 with track 78, A Fleeting Dream. I struggle to find the words that describe how good these 10s are. They are beyond 10 at this point. Track 80, Challenge. I gave this a 9, and I might be a little generous here. It is a fantastic track, but it is quite repetitive. I still think it is a 9 for me. This track plays during one of my favourite boss battles that happens after one of my favourite moments in the entire game. When we see Auron's memory, or his ghost of his past confronting Yunalesca, and then he gives this little speech revealing his whole reason for coming on this journey and pushing Yuna forward, is such a brilliant moment that I always look forward to. This music fits the fight so very well. 5 of the last 6 tracks on this OST scored 10s on both versions. Starting with track 85, Fight with Seymour. This is unbelievable. Again, I do prefer the original over the HD version, but I can't knock the HD one down. Both are fantastic. It is right up there. Fast paced with an awesome backing beat, and the synth is just up there to the max. Great track. One of my favourite boss battle themes in the series, hands down. Track 87, A Contest of Aeons. We really are in 10th Street now. Those strings are incredible. Opening with the Hymn of the Faith, that super fast tempo blended with that amazing backing track, just incredible. The difference in versions is too close to call. I think the original just takes it. Track 88, Final Battle. Someone must have had sore hands and fingers after playing this one. That piano is all over the place. Incredible. There are things I like about the OG over the HD, like the piano being more pronounced throughout, but I also like some of the changes in accompanying instruments in the HD version. Track 89, Ending Theme. I'm pretty sure this song is the same on both versions. Hauntingly beautiful. I don't know what else to say, I just feel so bad for Yuna at this point. And finally, track 91, Suteki Dani, Isn't It Wonderful, orchestra version, ends with a 10. Again, this song is the same on both versions. I don't think I need to say anything about this, but I will. It's my video, why not? Probably my second favourite performed piece in the whole series. Beautifully performed by Ricky, a wonderful song set to one of the greatest themes ever crafted. I always seem to get dust in my eyes when I listen to this. What an amazing song to end an album on. I would end this entry on this track if it weren't for the brilliant Servants of the Mountain. It really is so hard to pick favourites now. Any of the 10s on here are worthy of the best. I could easily choose Zanarkand, Suteki Dani, either version, A Fleeting Dream, Fight with Seymour, and any of the last 4 tracks on this album, but I have to end with one, and I choose Servants of the Mountain. What a phenomenal soundtrack to a phenomenal game, which now I have put this together, I want to replay more than ever. I wish I didn't need to sleep, then I might actually have time to revisit these amazing games. Final Fantasy X original soundtrack lands in 4th place. Only 3 albums left to go: Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Which one will take the 3rd slot? Which will claim the bronze trophy? In 3rd place we have Final Fantasy VII Remake. Track count 156, total listen time 8 hours, 32 minutes and 59 seconds. Here we are, the album that spurred me on to start this entire exercise. Final Fantasy VII Remake probably does deserve to be number 1. I have said it before, the way the music in Remake is re-envisioned and brought to life is so incredibly astounding. There are so many iconic themes that have been masterfully recrafted by veteran composers of the series, including Nobumatsu himself. Every piece shines, and it is a wonder this is not higher. It is the longest album in this whole experiment by far, over 8.5 hours of music. Blimey. This entry is going to take a bit of time. I'm going to spotlight every 9 and 10, which means I have 40 tracks to get through. This album scored 28 8s. 25 9s and 15 10s, the first of which is track 1, the Prelude Reunion. A beautiful rendition of the Final Fantasy Prelude from Final Fantasy VII. What a glorious track to open on. This is going to be something special. Track 2, Midgar, City of Mako, takes the first 9. I love this opening track. It starts really slow and haunting with the vocals, but that leads up to the title screen where everything just culminates in a grandiose fanfare, which sends tingles down my spine. Here are all the 28 8s I awarded to this album. Track 6, Mako Reactor 1, Battle Edit, took the next 10. Having the Mako Reactor theme with the heavier backing and forceful tones used in the battle edit elevates the track. This battle edit really gives me something I can jam to. The next track, track 7, Scorpion Sentinel, grabs another 10. I am certain every boss fight on this soundtrack scored a 9 or a 10. This is just incredible and well deserving of such a high score. Track 11, The Promised Land, Cycle of Souls, was awarded a 9. I got giddy like a child when I heard this track during the game. The Promised Land from Advent Children had made its way into the game, and I think that was the point I knew this trilogy was truly being handled with so much love and care. Over to track 17, Tifa's theme, Seventh Heaven, for the next 10. Beautiful. I think this is my favourite rendition of this track, an iconic theme for an iconic character. Another iconic theme now with track 20, main theme of Final Fantasy VII, Sector 7, Undercity, scoring at 10. I remember there being a bit of discourse over the fact that this theme featured in the first game, as you don't hear it in the original until after you leave Midgar, but I'm so glad they did include it. Otherwise we may not have gotten this incredible version of it. An original theme next, or I think it is, with track 21, Avalanche's theme. I awarded this a 9. I really like this theme. That main tune played by the brass instruments is catchy and I love those strings. Simple yet so effective. The next 9 comes along with track 34, Jessie's theme. A rather tranquil piece that is very much unlike her character. I love Jessie, and her voice actor nailed the role. I think we all fell for Jessie a little bit. Track 38, Ignition Flame, scored a 9. The fast tempo of this one keeps me on the edge and I love it. And the next track, track 39, Under Cover of Smoke, also scored a 9. A continuation of the track before, and I'm just going to say it. I really like Roche. I thought he was brilliant. Track 40, main theme of Final Fantasy VII, Nightfall in the Undercity, like its counterpart, gets a 10. Another glorious rendition of the main theme of Final Fantasy VII. I'm not sure which one I prefer. I love the strings on this one. The following track, track 41, Whisper's theme, gets a 9. If it weren't for the bit from 1 minute and 9 seconds to 1 minute and 30 seconds, this probably wouldn't have scored that high, maybe a 6 or a 7. But that segment is just so good I can't ignore it. It also picks up again from 2 minutes and 14 seconds, so yeah, it really does deserve this score. Track 48, Crab Warden, received a 9. A fantastic version of the standard battle theme, as a lot of these boss encounters tend to be. The next 10, we have encountered this track before, track 56, The Airbuster. I think I'll just let the music do the talking. I can't add anything of value here. Track 60, Flowers Blooming in the Church, did score a 9. A lovely, sombre take on Aerith's theme with some beautiful piano work, and I'm certain I can hear a clarinet in there too. Wonderful. Track 64, Hollow Skies, blew me away when I first heard it in-game, instantly a 10. I remember running around Sector 5 and just really vibing with this music. I knew right away I loved this. What an amazing track. Track 69, High 5, scored a 9. Maybe a little unusual for me, but I really like the funkiness of this track and it feels very Final Fantasy XIII inspired, despite it being a Nobuo Uematsu track. Then we get one of my favourite tracks of the album, although pretty much every 10 here is a favourite. Track 71, Due Recompense. That beat drop at 15 seconds, so good. The following track, 72, Wall Market, The Town That Never Sleeps, earns a 9. Really like this. Very upbeat track with some great jazzy undertones. Track 75, the most muscular, probably haunts so many trophy hunters, but this is amazing and gets a 10. I can picture Tifa doing those pull-ups now. What a fantastic take on the battle music. The next track gets a 9, track 76, An Unforgettable Night. I love the intro to this track and the steady beat throughout it. It gets me moving in my seat. Track 80, Corneo Coliseum, scored a 9. This has an amazing beat going behind it, and then at 27 seconds the high tones come in, and then at 57 seconds the heavy synth kicks in with an awesome tune. I always enjoyed this one. Track 81, Coliseum Deathmatch, received the next 9. Again, the battle music in this game is just astounding. So much fun to listen to. This soundtrack rocks. Track 88, Stand Up, received the next 9. Come Everyone had a grin on their face during this part of the game. The next 9 comes in at track 95, Smash 'em, Rip 'em. The opening of this track reminds me of the main theme from Deus Ex Human Revolution. This track really kicks into gear at 48 seconds. Track 104, Ghoul, also received a 9. Ghoulish Symphony from the Plus album is about a minute longer and includes the intro to this, so it's slightly different, but still deserves a 9. Great track. We jump over quite a few now to reach the next 9. Track 117, The Look on Her Face. A sad, emotional piece with a blend of Jesse's theme. I'm not crying, you're crying. I think I have some dust in my eye. Track 126, Fires of Resistance, garnered a 9. There is an air of resolve to this track. You can feel your party has real purpose now. They are out for revenge. 2 tracks on, we hit the first 10 in quite some time, but it's an instant smash. My favourite track from the Plus album, track 128, The Valkyrie. This is the exact same track, so there is nothing more to say. It's amazing. Track 132, Hand Over Hand, scored a 9. Instantly hummable and a fantastic tune. Totally fitting, not just with that segment of the game, but Tifa as a character as well. I feel this deserves more attention. It is a great track. Another track that features on the Plus album now with 145, Genova, Quickening, receiving a 9. This is still not quite a 10 for me, and I really don't know why. Maybe I'm being too hard on it, but something is holding it back. I think the drums and the beat are too soft, not pronounced enough. Maybe that is it. Track 146, Rufus Shinra, another one that already featured on the Plus album, comes in with a 10. I think this is my favourite rendition of the Let the Battles Begin theme, but it also has the Shinra theme in there too, expertly mashed together. Amazing. 2 more tracks that also feature on the Plus album and both scoring a 9, track 147, The Arsenal, and track 148, Midgard Expressway. The Plus version of this song is longer, but only by just over a minute. Nearly done with this soundtrack now, but still 5 more tracks to spotlight. Track 150, Arbiter of Fate, Rebirth, received a 9. The Arbiter of Fate tracks either side of this one both received 8s. I really like the way the Whispers theme is used in this track. One Winged Angel, Rebirth, smashes it on track 153, and this is just excellent. I awarded it a 10. Was there any doubt? I still think the version of this on Advent Children is my favourite, but this is 10 minutes of pure class. Track 154, 7 seconds till the end, scored the last 9 of this album. Oh, the foreboding of this track, City of the Ancients. This sends shivers down my spine. Track 155, Hollow, I awarded a 10. I love this song. This is so good. I was fortunate enough to hear a live performance of this at the Final Fantasy VII Remake live concert. What a track! The last track of the album, track 156, Credits, received the last 10 of the album. A near 13-minute compilation of some of the most incredible music introduced in this game. What a track to end on. And there we have it. Final Fantasy VII Remake takes the bronze medal in this experiment. What an astounding soundtrack to a wonderful game. So much incredible music, and yet we have so much more to look forward to. I already have the soundtrack to Rebirth, which dwarfs this soundtrack in both track count and listen time, and there is still music left on the cutting room floor, so I imagine a plus album will arrive too. I will cover Rebirth's soundtrack in a future episode. I cannot wait to share my thoughts on that. This remake project is something special, and I think we are all being spoiled as fans of Final Fantasy VII. For this entry though, I really can't pick a favourite, so I'm not going to try. Every 10 I awarded here is a favourite. I'll let the credit theme play for this one. There are but 2 soundtracks remaining, Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII. Which one will take silver and which will take gold? In second place we have Final Fantasy VII. Track count 85, total listen time 4 hours, 33 minutes and 28 seconds. The original Final Fantasy VII soundtrack takes second place. What an astounding soundtrack to one of the greatest games of all time. Final Fantasy VII, like many my age, was the first Final Fantasy game I ever played. It was the first JRPG I ever played, and the first game to evoke so many emotions in its story and characters, and nothing I have played before had ever made me feel like I did playing this game. I never owned the original PlayStation. I was a Nintendo boy growing up. One day I was at a friend's house and he had a PlayStation, and he showed me Final Fantasy VII. I had heard about the game from another friend who lived opposite me. I was enraptured by it, so much so that my friend across the street very kindly lent me his PlayStation and his copy of the game and told me I could keep it until I finished it, to the absolute annoyance of his brothers. I played the heck out of that game. I remember I injured my leg at school playing football, not deliberately, and spent a week off playing Final Fantasy VII. Even way back then, being in my very early teens, I fell in love with the music. I had never experienced music that was so emotionally charged as the characters and story. Don't get me wrong, Nintendo has its fair share of iconic themes, but nothing captured my attention quite like this. This entry is joint with Final Fantasy VIII with the number of 10s it received. It received 9 8s, 11 9s, and 17 10s. Of course, track 1, the prelude, took that first 10. This is so iconic. The first prelude from the series in chronological order to receive a 10, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here are the 9 8s I awarded to Final Fantasy VII. The first 9 of the album goes to track 4, Anxiety. What an amazing melody and fantastic choice of instrumentation. I have a remix of this song that I adore. I'll try and put a link to it in the description. We jump over a lot of 7s and 8s to the next 10. Track 20, Fight On. Is your head banging? Mine is. What a tune! The theme is a masterclass in boss music. Track 22, The Chase, also scored a 10. I was hoping for something glorious with this track in the remake, but they changed it up a little too much. I love the fast tempo of this track. I have always had a soft spot for this one. Track 24, main theme of Final Fantasy VII, received a 10. Could there be any doubt? This main theme is unbelievable. What a track. I love how it starts off soft and then builds up in the middle with a fanfare. Then gradually it softens down, and then it sort of becomes this theme of foreboding for a minute. Until it picks back up again. It's like the song is trying to convey elements of the story to you. I love it. With so many 10s, we hit another, with track 30, Electric de Chocobo. I think this is my favourite Chocobo theme from the entire series. Another 10 now, and I feel completely vindicated with my choice on the Integrate album, track 33, Fort Condor. I was never a big fan of the minigame in Fort Condor in the original game. I used to just let the Shinra troops reach the cabin so I could fight the commander, but this music is just fantastic. Still sticking with the 10s, well there are twice as many 10s as 9s on this album, track 37, Genova. This is what I want from this. Give me those big beats. The smooth orchestral version is nice, but I want heavy and hard with this track. The next track is a 9, going completely in the opposite direction with a subdued piece. Track 44, Desert Wasteland. I really like the slow tempo of this one and that theme over the top. I could whistle it for days. Track 45 is probably a favourite for so many. It is definitely one of mine and easily a 10, Cosmo Canyon. Certainly a highlight of the album. Fantastic theme for the home of a fantastic character. I always liked Red 13. It's just unfortunate his Limit 4 sucked, otherwise he would have made the final lineup. Track 46, Livestream, also scored a 10. Always find myself humming this, a great melody and a wonderful backing track. Track 47 rounds off this triple of 10s with The Great Warrior. This bit in the game really hits you in the feels, and this music amplifies it so much. How lucky are we to have the great Nobuo Uematsu in our time. Track 50, The Nightmare Begins, scored a 9. I'm struggling to find the words to describe this piece, so I'm just going to stop trying. It's an amazing track. Track 51, Sid's theme, follows and earns a 10. What a theme! Totally fitting with the character. You can really get a sense that this is the theme of a pilot, no, an astronaut, someone who belongs in the air. Track 53, Outtro, received a 9. This didn't really gel with me back in the day, but it has grown on me a lot since. It perfectly captures that Eastern feel. This next track is more a jingle, but it brings a smile to my face every time I hear it. Track 55, Win, Place, Show, Chocobo, scored a 10. This is just a jolly, fantastic tune and I love it. The following track, 56, Fiddle de Chocobo, scored a 9. Track 60, Words Drowned by Fireworks, also received a 9. What a lovely tune that I can't help but hum along to. The next track, scoring a 10, is track 63, Aerith's Theme. Quite possibly the most recognisable track from this album behind One Winged Angel. This theme hits incredibly hard for anyone who has played the original. The way this theme is used during that scene is so powerful, and I am hard pressed to find anything so impactful in any other game or media. The fact this theme carries on whilst you fight a form of Genova after what has just happened forces this theme into your psyche. What an incredibly emotive piece of music. The next 9 comes along at track 68, Shinra's Full Scale Assault. I like the militaristic sound of this with the marching drums against the almost fluty sounding melody over the top. Great track. And then of course we have track 70, The High Wind Takes to the Skies, earning a 10. Main theme with extra gusto. There is a good chance we won't hear a true rendition of this track until the third game in the remake. In fact, a lot of the great themes featured after this might not make appearances until after Rebirth, and that makes me sad. From the exciting gusto of the High Wind theme to a somber piece now, earning a 9. Track 76, Launching a Dream into Space. Another track I have always felt drawn to. The last 6 tracks of the album consist of 3 10s and 3 9s, starting with track 80, Judgment Day. I love this theme so much, and depending on the weather, often think it is my favourite track on the album. It's another march with an amazing melody. That theme at 1 minute and 21 seconds sends shivers down my spine. It has that steady constant beat behind it, like it is pushing the party forward to their final conflict. Only one other final dungeon track comes close to this. I cannot wait to hear what they do with this in Remake. Track 81, Genova Complete, scored a 9. I always felt like this track was a prelude to something. I guess it kind of was, being the first of the 3 final boss battles, but it lost a little something because of that. Still worth a 9 though. Track 82, Birth of a God, scored a 10. What a tune. My foot is already tapping, but this is just the appetizer. Everyone's favourite is next. Track 83, One Winged Angel. A 10 doesn't do it justice. Drop all pretenses. This is the fight to end all fights. What can I add to this? I have already said everything I want to say on the Advent Children version, which I still think is the best, but this is a classic and a masterpiece. That bit from 2 minutes and 13 seconds to 3 minutes and 1 second is just euphoric. The whole piece is a wonder to behold and deserves all the praise it receives from fans and music lovers alike. The last 2 tracks are back-to-back 9s. Track 84, The Planet's Crisis. The music here is telling a story, the epilogue of Final Fantasy VII. This one may be fueled by a lot of nostalgia, but I love it all the same. And of course, the final track of the album, track 85, ending credits receives the final 9. This marches through some of the amazing themes in the game until we hit the overall Final Fantasy theme that has featured in many of the games in the series, if not all of them. A fantastic end to a fantastic soundtrack and a wonderful game. So there we have it. Final Fantasy VII, the original, released way back in 1997, takes the second spot. I have played this game so many times I have lost count. I must have gone through it nearly 20 times by now, if not more. An iconic and legendary soundtrack that so many others could only wish they could emulate. This soundtrack will forever hold a special place in my heart, but not the biggest. There is one left to go. With an impressive 17 10s under its belt, like the last entry, I will not pick a favourite. Some of these picks may have been a bit generous with nostalgia taking hold, but then, with some of them, a score of 10 doesn't do them justice. I don't need to tell you how good this soundtrack is, you already know. There is only one soundtrack left, and it doesn't surprise me it is here. In first place we have Final Fantasy VIII. Track count 74, total listen time 4 hours, 9 minutes and 30 seconds. This has been my favourite Final Fantasy soundtrack since I heard it whilst playing the game way back in 2000. What a track to open on. Track 1, Liberi Fatali, has got to be the best opening theme of a Final Fantasy game, and this scored a 10. I didn't get Final Fantasy VIII on release in 1999 because I didn't have a PlayStation. In fact, even when I bought the game, I didn't get my own PlayStation until Final Fantasy IX came along. Final Fantasy VIII is my favourite Final Fantasy. I love it so much despite all its flaws and how ridiculous the story is. I think I gravitate towards it because I can really identify with Squall, not in being an elite soldier of a private mercenary group, but in his awkwardness when dealing with people and how he is consistently talking to himself in his head. This is me to a T. I just clicked with him on such a personal level that I found myself drawn in by his story and I was rooting for him to find his happiness. As this is my favourite Final Fantasy, it stands to reason that the soundtrack would be my favourite. But here is the thing. Do I love the soundtrack because I love the game, or do I love the game because I love the soundtrack? I'm not sure I can fully answer that question, but I think it's a bit of both, with a slight lean towards the soundtrack. If the soundtrack had been mediocre, I don't think this would be my favourite Final Fantasy. That would most definitely go to 7. There are so many flaws in the junction and battle system that I couldn't objectively say it is a great game. Good, but not great. I love it all the same. I will say, I love the junction system. It's basically like playing with a spreadsheet. The soundtrack, for me, is hands down the best thing Nobuo Uematsu has ever done. It has a lot of militaristic themes in much of its music juxtaposed against some fantastic love ballads. With that said, I think I need to get on and start running through this soundtrack. So let's jump in. Final Fantasy VIII takes gold. Comes out on top with 10 8s, 16 9s and 17 10s. Surprise, there is 1 4 and 1 3 on here. The only 2 tracks I would skip when listening to this album. First the 2 below average tracks. The 4 goes to track 50, Odeka Ked Chocobo. I think part of me is annoyed I never got to play the Pocket Station Chocobo game, as it was not available in the UK or outside of Japan for that matter. And the 3 goes to track 27, Cactus Jack, Golbadian Anthem. I really don't care for this track. I have never liked it. I can't put my finger on it. I should like it as it has those military drums in it, but I really don't like the theme. Moving on to the good stuff. Here are all the 8s I awarded to this fabulous soundtrack. Track 3, Blue Fields, received the first 9. Not the best overworld music in the series, but it is right up there. A great catchy tune to get things started. Track 4, Don't Be Afraid, follows, and that also receives a 9. There are so many layers to this music and so many instruments all taking their turn to knock out that amazing tune. Track 8, The Landing, scored a 9. The way this starts with the heartbeat, which then transitions into those 32-bit era strings, I think that's what they're supposed to be. And then you get the horns, the trumpets, and then the main theme kicks in and the tempo ramps up. At 52 seconds, I'm gone. And the following track, track 9, starting up, gets another 9. A short track, but I really like the way this builds into that industrial sounding backing with an almost whimsical melody over it. It leads into an absolute banger of a track. Track 10, Force Your Way, gets the second 10 of the album. No beating around the bush on this one. This is hands down my favourite normal boss battle music in the entire series. This is so incredible, I feel I must dissect this one just a little bit. First off, that intro. The first 22 seconds is just pure genius. The tempo is fast and furious, and then it hits this melody where the music bounces between high and low notes in scales going up and down. When we hit 1 minute and 7 seconds, we are treated to something truly incredible. The next 40 or so seconds is just pure bliss to my ears until the song repeats. I never grow tired of this song. Track 15, Shuffle or Boogie, scores a 10. The theme to the best card game in the series. I've played quite a bit of Queen's Blood now, still not sure if it's better than this. I think Triple Triad just takes it. A fantastic theme that gets me moving every time. The following track, track 16, Waltz for the Moon, received a 9. This is the first time we get the Eyes on Me melody laying the seeds of what is to come. I can't help but hum along to this, and when it kicks up a gear at 59 seconds, it really earns that 9. The next 10 of the album is quite possibly most people's favourite track from this game. Track 19, The Man with a Machine Gun. Is this theme the reason most people put up with the Laguna flashbacks? It certainly helps. What an absolute corker of a track. We have 4 9s now on the way to the next 10. Track 25, The Mission. Wow, I am already tapping my feet. It takes a while to really get going, but that steady rhythm eventually culminates into a brilliant sound. A track with some similar structure to the last, track 28, Only a Plank Between One and Perdition. It has that same steady and constant rhythmic beat through it that is so present in a lot of this soundtrack. Track 33, The Stage is Set. One of the most militaristic tracks on the album, and I love it. Not quite enough for a 10, but certainly a 9. And track 35, Phthos, Lusek, Wikos, Vinosek. You might be mistaken for thinking that the title of this track is in Latin. In fact, it is a made-up language and is an anagram of succession of witches and love. Literally the whole theme of this game. This track has a great beat behind it and a brilliant melody. 58 seconds is where it's at. 2 tracks later we hit the next 10 of the album with track 37, Premonition. I really like the despairing nature of this track, and then it feeds into that amazing beat with that flute-like melody. Oh, this soundtrack is so good. Track 39, Fragments of Memories, scores a 9. This is a very unusual pick for me, and I might be letting nostalgia feed this one, but I do really like this track. There is something very wholesome about it. It feels like home, and I adore it for that. The next 10 comes along, one that was covered on the Death Unto Dawn soundtrack, track 42, Amy. Like I said before, this is peak piano in the series. What a beautiful melody. From 1 minute and 4 seconds to 2 minutes and 10 seconds where it repeats is just so absolutely gold, and the rest is glorious. If I was learning to play the piano, I would be aiming to play this. Another 10 comes along at track 45, Movin'. Always had a lot of admiration for this track. Another heavy militaristic track with a fantastic melody. That bit at about 2 minutes is fire, and I can't help but hum along to it. You get those really bassy drums with that industrial sound, like a hammer striking an anvil. Brilliant. Track 49, Fisherman's Horizon, another favourite of many and one I gave a 9. A wonderfully chill track, possibly the most chill of the soundtrack. This next 9 is probably going to ruffle some feathers, but this is my list and I love it. Track 54, Slideshow Part 2. I don't know what to say, but this makes me laugh every time. This probably should be a 7 or an 8, but I genuinely adore this funky silly piece of music, so I gave it a 9. Track 56, The Salt Flats, also scored a 9. A more sombre piece of music, this one. I can hear the groundworks for some of Nobu's later tracks here. It reminds me a little of Bramble from Final Fantasy IX and the Macalania Woods from Final Fantasy X. Another 9 comes along at track 59, Dance with the Balam Fish. What a jolly jaunt of a track. Nobuo Uematsu must have had a blast putting this soundtrack together. We are very nearly done with the 9s, only 2 left on this soundtrack, yet we have 9 10s still to get through. The back end of this album is ridiculously good. The next track is not listed on the soundtrack on Spotify or YouTube Music, but it does feature on the official physical soundtrack release, so I have included it here. I mean, how could I not? Track 62, Eyes on Me.
Darling, so there you are, with that look on your face.
I don't think I'll be able to sample this, but I will try. What an amazing song. I remember my friend and I had our mouths agape when this song started playing. It was incredible to hear an actual song feature in the game, and this song is a beautiful love song performed wonderfully by Fei Wong. The first and one of the best performed pieces in the series. Track 63, Mods to Chocobo, takes a 10. This is not my all-time favourite Chocobo theme from the series, but this is so damn catchy that it gets a 10. The next track, track 64, Ride On, also scored a 10. What a fantastic symphony track to cruise around the overworld with. I do prefer the High Wind and the High Wind theme, but this is still a favourite track of the album and worthy of a 10. Track 66, Lunatic Pandora, scored a 9. Only one more 9 on the album. I really like the sound of this track. It is heavy on the synth, juxtaposed against those rolling drums. It is an incredibly simple and effective tune. I'm going to jump to the last track of the album quickly. Track 74, Overture, is the last 9 I awarded. I wanted to cover this now because everything from track 67 onwards is a 10 except this last track. 7 10s in a row. This game ends with a cacophony of absolute bangers. Starting this perfect run is track 67, Compression of Time. I love this track. I think I have used this term somewhere else in the series, but I find this hauntingly beautiful. When that harp kicks in at around 57 seconds, amazing. Next, track 68, The Castle. I love a good final dungeon theme. Judgment Day from Final Fantasy VII is a smidge above this, but this is a brilliant track. That organ is so pronounced and perfect for the setting. It gives me a haunted house feel to the whole thing. The main melody of the track kicks in at around 1 minute and 45 seconds, and it is such a bop. The last two were 10s, but these next tracks are on another level. I just don't account for it in my scoring. Track 69, The Legendary Beast. What a tune! I don't know where to begin. This is perfection and one of my all-time favourite tracks of the album and the series. I have gushed so much over all the music I have covered in this series, such that I am struggling to find ways to say how much I love this without constantly repeating myself. I genuinely feel this piece of music is a masterclass in music composition, one of Nobu's greatest. Track 70, Maybe I'm a Lion. There are some Eastern influences I can hear in this, and that bit from 1 minute 37 seconds to 2 minutes and 20 seconds reminds me a lot of Dancing Mad from Final Fantasy VI. Yet it is incredibly distinct and a brilliant track sandwiched between two giants. Track 71, The Extreme. I'm going to say it, I put this above One Winged Angel, or at least every version of it outside of the Advent Children version. It starts slow, not going to lie, as it sets the scene. It really gets going at 1 minute and 39 seconds. But from that point, this track is flipping awesome. At 3 minutes and 5 seconds, it goes crazy. I just love how fast this is and how everything comes together so perfectly. hands down my favourite final boss theme from the series. Track 72, the successor. Another peak piano piece from the series now. I'll admit it is a bit of a weak 10, but as I said before, this is my list which is fueled by my tastes, experiences and nostalgia. And this is nostalgia in piano form. I adore this track, and from 2 minutes and 47 seconds to the end, it is just so beautiful I had to give it a 10. The whole thing is beautiful, but that section is heaven. The last 10 I awarded to this album, and the last track of this entire series, track 73, Ending Theme. There are two versions of this song. The one on streaming services is 8 minutes and 33 seconds long. The version on the original physical album is 13 minutes and 18 seconds. This is because the original version includes a rendition of Eyes on Me for a large portion of the middle of the track. This entry goes off the version on the physical soundtrack.
My last night here for you. Same old songs, just once more.
The first couple of minutes are rather forgettable, but from 2 minutes and 30 seconds, Eyes on Me comes in, and how can you not love it? Having this wonderful song play out over the incredible CGI ending, which I still feel looks good even by today's standards, is simply amazing. At 6 minutes and 57 seconds, the song changes to that glorious Final Fantasy main theme. This version of it is extremely grandiose. We are then treated to an anthem, followed by a soft retreat into the final moments of the track to mark the end of the game. Unbelievable. And there we are. My number one Final Fantasy album goes to Final Fantasy VIII. With so many amazing songs, there is no chance I can pick a favourite. How can I possibly choose between Force Your Way, The Man with the Machine Gun, The Legendary Beast, Maybe I'm a Lion, and The Extreme? Or if we want something less heavy, we have Amy, Eyes on Me, Compression of Time, The Successor, or even Shuffle or Boogie. I just can't pick. This album is too good. Maybe this is truly the result of nostalgia, but I feel wholly satisfied with the outcome of this list. Not only did Final Fantasy VIII come out on top, it came out with such a huge margin over second place that it would take something truly spectacular to ever have a chance of coming close to knocking it from the top spot. What an incredible soundtrack for a wonderful game, and my number one Final Fantasy soundtrack of all time. I hope you've enjoyed this dive into the realm of Final Fantasy music. I have thoroughly enjoyed putting this together, even if I don't feel qualified to talk about it. If you are still here, then give yourself a giant pat on the back. You made it through this ridiculously long video of this idiot's ramblings, and I thank you for that. As I have mentioned, there are a fair few omissions from this list, soundtracks that I would like to cover in a future episode. Namely, Final Fantasy XVI, which I have still not played, a soundtrack that I would like to cover after I finish the game. The Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. There doesn't appear to be any official soundtrack for these, so I may have to use community-led playlists if any exist. I would like to re-evaluate Crisis Core soundtrack, as I feel my opinions of that have changed considerably since playing the game. And lastly, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I have finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth at the time of writing this, It is the reason Part 3 has taken so long to come out, and the music in that game is something very special. I have the soundtrack and even thought of adding it to this series of videos, but I will hold off for now. It has some truly amazing tracks on it. Many of my favourites are original songs too, not remakes of current tracks. So maybe this will be a contender for the top spot? We'll see. It has one heck of a hill to climb. There is also a lot of music in the game not featured in the soundtrack, so I believe there will be a plus album down the line too. There is one score for a track I would like to change. I have listened to this song so much in recent times and it is incredible. I originally scored it an 8, but now I'm going to give it a 10. To Fire and Sword from Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. This track absolutely slaps and I love it, so I'm giving it a bump now. This pushes Shadowbringers from 36th place to 35th place, swapping locations with Dirge of Cerberus. Another thing I wanted to do was merge albums together from the same game. Now the list consists of 24 entries instead of 41. I won't highlight all of them, just those that have merged. Final Fantasy II gets a boost and jumps over Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns, finishing in 19th place. Final Fantasy III also jumps over Lightning Returns. Final Fantasy XIV comes in next, all 9 albums put into one puts it in 17th place. I was quite surprised by this, I thought it would be much higher. There is very nearly 24 hours of music in this one entry, 732 tracks. Final Fantasy I is the next one that merged and landed in 15th place. Final Fantasy XV falls in at 13th place, just ahead of Final Fantasy XI. The two Final Fantasy IV soundtracks merge and land just in front of Final Fantasy V, taking 11th place. The biggest drop, though, is Final Fantasy VII Remake. The Plus and Integrate album drag it down, averaging it, so it lands in 8th place. Final Fantasy X and X HD merge and keep just ahead of Final Fantasy VI, meaning Final Fantasy X takes the 3rd place, with Final Fantasy VII in 2nd, Final Fantasy VIII in 1st. That will do it, my friends. I hope you have enjoyed this series. I would love to do more and even branch out to soundtracks from other games and franchises that I love. If you can like, comment and share this video, that will really motivate me to come back and do more like this. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.